Welcome back. We're going to be running through some ranked matches in Explorer here with this variation of the Niv Mizzet Reborn deck. So this is the Explorer ranked. As you can see, it's a pretty standard deck for most parts. We do have Thalia here for a bit of extra value, Kaito, Edgar, Supreme Verdict, and a few of our other standard hits. Here's our land base. Now, key thing with this deck you'll notice is there's no Invasion of Ravnica. I've kind of turned off that card. I'm going to try out the Invasion of Ixalan instead because of its ability to just dig, find a permanent. Basically it'll hit us a land or a creature or whatever we need. Apart from that, we'll be using a few other battles here to see how things go. Invasion of Urgamon is going to be our basic looting. Invasion of Azgul is going to be our edict that sits on the battlefield ready for a Yorion Blink. Aside from that though, there's not much more to say about the deck. The one big end card we have is the Invasion of Tolvada, which as you know is a effect which is just going to, when we flip it, will start making us tokens. I love effects like this. You know I tried to build a deck with the wishboard around things like this. Yeah, it's pretty solid aside from that. Hopefully the Broken Sky is good. I think giving lifelink to 2-1 lifelinks is going to be very relevant. Obviously it's going to be like turn 5, 6 before we get them. But I'm ready to give it a go and see how it goes. We can shoot it off Invasion if we need. Sideboard, Graveyard Hate, Counter Hate, a bit more board wipes and some Verstar removal and combo hate. So let's just get to some games. Right, in post I will tell you this set was pretty rough. Not this match in particular, but this whole set in total. I think I screwed up in the mana base, but I decided to leave the content in. We'll just see how things go, and I'll explain to it as we come to it. So first things first, we have to exile. Ultimately, I choose to get rid of one of the Clarions here. I am prevalent that we could get Fort Seized, but our opponent just drops a Zalfran Void. And then we top deck our 5 mana card without finding our land. So double Skylands here. We play Haunted Ridge, which is sad because we don't get to play it on curve. We find a Fable, so we're going to just crack the Invasion. And like I said, right now, I think I'm tempted by the Invasion, but ultimately we have to hit our land drops here. Our opponent is purely colourless deck, so we're expecting, Khans. Now we can get the Khan with the Invasion of Azgul if they don't make the construct, if they just get greedy and try to get some card advantage. But unfortunately they make the 1/1 construct that will be sacrificed. So ultimately I decide I'm going to Assassin's Trophy the Khan here. This is also for a basic land check. They're a colourless deck, but they are running wastes. I forgot they've been added to Arena. They go up to an Ugin, remove our, and then they flood out their artifacts. Alright, so we hit our land hit drop here. So I decide, I'm trying to figure out if I can Clarion and then Azgul, which I think I can, so. But rather, I would prefer to go Tolsimir, gain some life, kill the construct, have a Tolsimir for a Yorion Blink late game, that's my plan. Also, as you can see there's a rope. I don't know what was going on to this day when I recorded, but every opponent was slow. I had to cut 2 games because literally opponents just roped for no reason. They uptick their Ugin, and they hit the big mana Ugin, so yeah, we can't beat that from there. Right, colourless, so basically it's a control matchup. We just bring in our counters, we take out our board wipes. I don't think there'll be anything too impactful here. And yeah, definitely Vanishing Verse doesn't go in. Me doing a little squiggle with the mouse there was me saying, God, it would have been good to draw any of my removal. Right. Mulligan again, we find 5 lands, that's fine with us. I'm scared to put a land back because we've been getting screwed with lands most of this game here. So we just start with a Triumph. Our opponent plays the Crystal Grotto. We'll get the Invasion of Urgamon down. Now we can loot away a land because we know we have one, and we get a ramp into with a treasure. Opponent drops the Mind Maze. We draw a second Niv Mizzet, which is an interesting premise. They drop a Matter Reshaper, so I'm going to cycle this Ketria Triumph to try to find some better action. Because we have the treasure to go for a turn 4 Niv, which we drop here. We find our base, we find 2 battles and a veto. Veto here is the game changer. The wins for these colourless decks are usually Khans, Ugins, maybe an Ulamog in the late game, but if we can just answer their cards like that, we'll be in pretty good shape here. With the Invasion of Tovolar on the field, I could flip it, but I decide I want to I don't have the untapped land, sorry, is what I realise here. And plus, we are kind of in a danger zone now, because our opponent is going to have potential mana for Ugin, so we flip an Invasion of Urgamon. That lets us choose if we want to discard a card, so I'm going to discard the Niv Mizzet here. I already have my big singleton battle, but the reason I do that is I want the Edict, and if I'm going to drop Invasion of Tovolar, I want a good permanent in my graveyard to reanimate. Opponent scries with Treasure Map. They gain 4 life off the Mire's Main Tome and draw a card. They draw another card here, so they dig in for some kind of way out. In the end step, I'm going to Leyline Binding the Matter Reshaper because I don't want them to get the death trigger. Basically, I'm just trying to keep the card advantage down. Alright, so, first things first, let's play the Invasion of Tovolar. Let's get our Niv reload. Sacrifice the Niv to the Legend rule. Reload! We don't find anything too impactful here, so I ultimately flip the Broken Sky, make our 2/1 lifelink flyer, and decide to keep up with Dovin's Veto, which is good for the Forsaken Monument because we need to do it here. Now though, this is something I make a mistake with. Our opponent is really close to flipping the Treasure Map, and that could give them huge mana if they have it, so I realize I only have a single blue mana here, so this is a hint at how bad the third game is going to go. We go straight in, apply pressure, put them on a 2-turn clock here. Using a Wandering Mind, I'm going to go find some answer. We find a Veto. We don't have the colours to cast it, so we'll just make an end step Flying Spirit. Our opponent plays a land, and they concede. This was stupidly dangerous because they could have activated and flipped the Treasure Map, making 3 treasures, which would have ramped them into like something big like an Ugin. If it had been an Ulamog, I wouldn't have been too bothered, but we had to play around it there. Alright, third game here. And this is where we hit the 5-color curse. We have a Leyline Binding and some great spells here, but you might notice we don't have blue. Now, with our abilities to make treasure, I think this isn't going to be a big issue. I can get the Leyline Binding ready for anything like a turn 4 Khan or something crazy, or something I'm not too worried about. So we'll just keep developing our presence here with our lands. They go to turn 3 to Matter Reshaper. We draw another blue card, but no blue mana. I decided to use the Invasion here to just flip it, because we've still got basically the Leyline Binding if we need it. Opponent goes to turn 4. They choose to scry here. Pass back to us. We draw another Leyline Binding, so I'm just going to shock this in so I have double Leyline Binding for anything too scary. They make a Phyrexian Might, gain a bit more life. They go for a Forsaken Monument here. So in response, I'm going to Leyline Binding the Monument, and I'm going to Leyline Binding the Might. This is probably because I have a conspiracy theory that Arena tries to give you cards to cast. So if you don't have anything you could cast in your hand, they ultimately give up and give you something to play. Our opponent plays a Khan. Outside the game, they find, I believe it is, the Stone Brain, so they're going to activate that to take our Nivs. We draw our 6th blue card, and in just frustration, I concede. This was at the end of the session, I understand, but yeah. Right, second match here. We keep a hand with some battles and some spells, we'll just see how things go, but once again, no blue mana, so I need to review the blue mana. But, you know, we top deck like a crazy man. Ultimately, I've decided I can use the Growth Spiral here, drop the Swamp. We find a Falio and the Gitrog monster. So, I decide I'm going to use the Invasion of Ixalan here to counter-deck, and it does appear that they have counters in their deck. I'm going to add Edgar to hand here. Pass back. So these guys are creativity. As you can see here, they make a treasure token. Well, Creativity Transmogrify. Sorry, say it correctly. I'm going to Leyline Binding here to take out the treasure. It might seem stupid, but honestly, it's probably the best thing you can do here because they're going to have some way to interact. They make disappear our Edgar, which is fair. We untap here. I decided to play the Thalia because I'm worried that they could potentially have more counter magic. I pass back. They use a Shinzokin to make tokens in the end step. That was something I was not aware the deck ran. So, as we say here, they transmogrify into a Torrential Gearhulk, which triggers the Magnum Opus. They get to make a 4/4, tap 2 permanents, draw 2 cards, and do 4 damage. So, our Thalia is dead, unfortunately. We didn't get to see much of her here. With them tapped out, though, we will go for the Niv Mizzet reload. We get a very good spread here, and we have to discard a card. And get rid of the Invasion of Urgamon here. Our opponent thinks about what they're going to do here. They go to combat, so they clearly have some form of burn, but we are going to trade for the Torrential Gearhulk here. Yep, there's a Prismari command. They loot away some cards. Do 2 damage to the Niv, so Niv is going to die here. Eventually, when our opponent gets through it. We draw another Niv Mizzet here, but I'm going to use the Invasion of Asgul here as a counter check. As I said, we want to limit the number of creatures they have, and if they want to use one of the sack effects like Creativity, we want to be able to try and kill the creature before the Transmogrify resolves. Well, the Polymorph effect, if anyone's... second Prismari command. Domes us, draw some cards. They go to combat and attack. We're going to use the Tyrant Scorn here to kill the 4/4, keep our life total healthy. Our opponent chooses not to fight over it, which is interesting, but they do know a lot of the cards in our hand. We draw another land here, so what we're going to use is a Wandering Mind, and I realize I only have a single blue here, which was another problem. So let's get a Leyline Binding ready to counter or remove a creature if they play it. They have another Prismari command, so that's their third Prismari command this game. They make a treasure, and they pass. Sorry, they move to their turn. We're on 8 life here, so we've moved to combat. I'm going to use the Invasion of Urgamon. I'm going to loot away the Invasion of Ixalan here because I want to find interaction or ways to kill tokens. And I'm just going to keep putting pressure on them here. They flash in the Torrential Gearhulk on its own. I look through their graveyard, they haven't put anything too scary in there yet, so I think we're just going to be hit with another Prismari command. In response, we're going to Vanishing versus Torrential Gearhulk. We can still Leyline Binding if we get in a pinch. They choose 2 damage to our face and make a treasure token, so we are down to 6 life now. Scary number. And they have double cards here for double treasure tokens here for the Creativity if they have it. They're currently reading all our battles just to find out what the heck they do. Instead, we're going to just Growth Spiral. We find a board wipe, find another land, just deploy that. I move Yorion into hand here, but ultimately I can't cast him because I really don't want to go shields down here. I attack the Invasion of Urgamon here because ultimately tutoring for the Broken Sky would be pretty cool, but also doing this might force our opponent to use their interactive spells on the Wandering Mind for fear that there's something broken we're trying to get. Our opponent makes a third treasure token and passes back. On our opponent's turn, they Creativity for free. So, first things first, we're going to Leyline Binding, kill a treasure token. In response, they sack it. They're then going to Assassin's Trophy, another treasure token here. See if they sack it or if they want the land out their deck. That's pretty good. They just use that. So while they're holding up mana, we're just going to Growth Spiral here. finds us another Wandering Mind. Our opponent hits a Torrential Gearhulk, casts the Magnum Opus, puts us down to 2, taps 2 permanents, draws 2 cards. So they probably have one more Prismari command that they could have. They drop a Fable of the Mirror Breaker, but they're tapped out. So here's the big thing. I consider using the board wipe, but then I realize I think I have a better play here. This is the reason that we put all these battle permanents onto the battlefield. We swing in, and we're going to activate Yorion. Blink everything on our board. So, end step, 2 Leyline Bindings come back. We're going to use these to take out the tokens before the Edict effect goes off. We're taking out the tokens because this deck could easily run Brazen Borrower and we don't want to force them to bounce anything. We loot away our board wipe, find more permanents, more spells, loot a Niv Mizzet, and we Vanishing Verse the Fable before they get to loot that off. So it's basically just hold our breath so that they don't draw that last Prismari command or a way to deal 2 damage to us. Opponent takes a long time thinking about it. I'm pretty sure at this point they were slow rolling, but instead they just concede to a Fiery Impulse. And then, very disappointingly, they concede, which is very strange because this was a really fun back and forth match, skin of our teeth kind of thing. Next matchup here we have Eric. We have an interesting hand, but we didn't have colours, so we mull and we mull again. We got to get 2 cards removed here, so I'm going to take some slow lands here because I just want to have all my types. I lost about a ton of games here, as you can see. We get turn 1 Fort Seized, so opponent takes the Vanishing Verse, we top deck another one because we're crazy. And they appear to be mono black, which is what I'm saying. They sign in blood, pass back, we'll drop another Scion here, drop an Invasion of Urgamon. We got 2 removal spells for any threats they play, so I'm pretty happy with our position, so I'm not going to loot any cards. We draw our 4th land. Put Yorion into hand here because I just need to find something to do. Opponent plays a Field of Ruin. It's actually very interesting for us because we don't actually have a land that will take us off a land type here. So they take out the Hardest Proving Ground, which then leaves us, well, here's the thing, between the 2 Triomes we have all 5 basic land types, so it's just a case of what we want to cast. I take blue here because blue cards have been messing me up all set that I've been playing. I consider whether or not it's worth Yorioning here just to like bounce something around, but we're going to see. Opponent goes up to 5 mana. So I'm expecting, yep, there's Sheoldred, sorry. End step, we're just going to Vanishing Verse that. Sorry, during the battle step. I was too excited. And we top deck another Vanishing Verse. I'm going to use Yorion here just to get another spell out here and just put another creature on the board. Force them to use something from their hand. I'm pretty sure this Mono Black Devotion deck will be running nothing but aggro. I'm also going to loot away something here. We do find the Invasion of Tol Vadar, which is really good here. They drop the Invasion of Innistrad, which kills our Yorion. I then Vanishing Verse their Invasion. On my turn I draw Kaito. So I'm going to use this nice little synergy here. I'm going to use the Invasion of Tol Vadar to get back Yorion, to blink the Invasion of Tol Vadar, or Tol Vada, however you say it, Tol Vada probably. I'll look it up after I finish recording. And this will let us get back another permanent, non-battle. Opponent goes into the tank for a while here. Stuff comes back. We get back a permanent, which is ironically the land that they Field of Ruined. We're going to keep Kaido in our hand because he's very impactful here. We just need a payoff. We have everything we need. Murderous Rider takes out Yorion. We find another land. We drop a Kaito. Draw a card. Find a Tolsimia. Opponent has 5 mana and mono black. What do you think they're going to cast? A variety of different spells or something? Intrigued? Or they're just going to cast Invoke Despair, a color pride breaking stupid card that should have never been printed. Yeah, I don't like the Invoke Despair. Alright, we make 2 creatures here, but ultimately their hand is probably just full of removal as mono black. They have a long think about it. Yeah, I'm not a fan of mono black having enchantment removal. I've said multiple times I hate the fact that Commander has affected 60 card formats to the point where literally they foresees us, which is great because we have a land. Yeah, I hate the Commander players have got to the point where they're like, hey, I want to play a monocolored deck but not actually have to work and build around it, so give me cards that just do everything I need. We get a Leyline Binding, so we're going to take out the Archfiend of Dross here. We're going to hit the Tolvada. We would love to flip this if we can. Opponent plays a Liliana here. -2 makes a sacrifice. They play a Graveyard Trespasser, eats the Yorion. We hit a land, we're just dead here. I only hope we'd be top decking a Niv, but at this point I was done. We were on a 2-turn clock and we would have to Niv into removal for Yorion. They had also answers in hand, probably more Invoke Despairs because, you know, you need them. Opponent's taking a while they just sort out their things here. Mono black is normally a great matchup for us, but as you saw there, we just did not hit anything impactful. We needed basically to hit, you know, well, anything. Alright, so we keep a hand here that has basically it's slow, but we need 7 cards because, you know, Arena loves giving every player a turn 1 Footsies. On the turn, they don't get a turn 1 Footsies. Right, so we have plenty of Edicts here to slow our opponent down. They play Shadow's Misery. We drop another Triome. We hit the Invasion of Azgul here to try and slow him down. They sign in Blood to draw some cards. I play the Wandering Mind here, and there's our 6 lands. And this was the last match I played of this set. This was the final straw for me. On our opponent's turn, we don't have white, so we've got to use the Invasion of Azgul here to make them lose something. We're going to attack them directly, put them down to 14. They play a Sheoldred. We don't draw a land, and in frustration I just concede. I mean, that was a bit quick, yeah, but, you know, we were going to lose to a flip Sheoldred. So, let's get into our next match. This was a very rough set to play through. Ultimately here we got a pretty okay opening. We got a Triome that leads us into what we need. So we get a Llanowar Elves, which scares me, thinking we could have Mono Green Devotion here. They play another Elf, so it could be, and then they play a Breeding Pool. So I'm not sure exactly what this is, but I'm going to run out my Invasion of Ixalan here. We find 4 permanents off the top of our deck. I take the Invasion of Azgul. I think just having Edicts against a deck like this will be pretty good. They also don't know that we have the turn 3 Clarion here, so if they are elves and they deploy more creatures, we'd have a great shot. Our opponent's reading our Invasion because they're clearly not familiar with any of these cards. They play a Hydroid Crystal for 2, so this is basically a Simic Ramp deck, it appears. Fortunately, the Clarion will clear up the board. They play another Paradise Druid. They missed their land drop here, so I'm going to just keep forcing them to sack mana docks here, keep them down on mana. As you saw in our matches earlier today, that missing land drops can be brutal. Opponent plays a Scavenging Ooze. I shock in here, so I can Wandering Mind and then still use the Leyline Binding if I don't find a good answer to whatever the Skoos or whatever they have in their hand. Fortunately, there's plenty for them to eat with the Scavenging Ooze. And this is another slow opponent here, so it's one thing I will ask Wizards, please, we find a Vanishing Verse, which is great, please give us the ability to ban players. If I run into someone who just ropes all the time, I would rather just ban them and not have to play them again. Like, this is me thinking that they're going to rope, so I was setting us ready for the Salty Yoko. They choose to eat a creature. They get up to 4 mana here. They play a Hydroid Krasis for 2. Play a land. Play our second Wandering Mind. We find more invasions here, so I'm going to use the invasion again. First things first, I got to sack this though to get a red mana, so I can cast it. Now I have 1 mana Leyline Bindings, which is perfect for us. Swing in with a Wandering Mind, put him down to 18. They play a Toski, so we have a Leyline Binding for that. On our turn, they just concede, so we move to our next game, sorry. Right, Simic Ramp, so we want more board wipes, and I think the Tolvada will come down, and as will Kaito. They have main board Scavenging Ooze, which I assume is a 4 of, which means we're probably not going to get much value out of the reanimation side. And if we can control their board, we have a better slot in the late game than just playing an enchantment. Also, a heavy green deck, I'm not a fan of playing enchantment into it. Although we didn't show them any enchantments, but I wouldn't be surprised if green cards now just incidentally all kill enchantments for fun. Right. We choose to keep this because we have a Triome into the Invasion of Ixalan, which should sort our mana out. So if we want a Clarion or board wipe here, we need 2 white, or white and a red. And we basically have, it is a gamble off the Invasion of Ixalan, but we should be pretty good here. Opponent goes to their turn. Honestly, I think the ability to ban or like choose not to interact with players would be absolutely amazing. I think that it would also just encourage the we find a red source, so I ultimately choose I'm going to just play the Triumph to develop my board here. I'm going to play a Invasion of Ixalan maybe. I am, yeah. I wanted to think they're okay to just deploy stuff here. So I'm going to pick a land that comes into play tapped. We can now either Vanishing Verse, we can Supreme Verdict if they drop anything huge, or Clarion if they go wide with tons of little creatures. But this slow play is what really annoys me, and I would love the ability to like ban people, because I would love them to implement the thing that was in Marvel vs. Capcom 3, which was the Hellscape. Our opponent deploys 2 more creatures, all with 3 toughness, that instantly die to a board wipe. So we're going to deploy Fable Passage. Yes, for those of you who don't know, they drop a Scooze. In Marvel vs. Capcom 3, if you dropped out of games or you basically had a bad reputation, you would only be played against players with other bad reputations. And it ultimately created the Hell queue, where if you were in the Hell queue and went online, you would just run into people that would disconnect from matches, and ultimately it would cause 2 things. It would cause these slow players to play better, or it would cause them to quit. Neither option there is bad. Our opponent negates our Leyline Binding, but we draw an Invasion of Asgul, so we get to just kill that off. We get a Shocking and get a Wandering Mind. I choose the Tyrant Scorn, which is an interesting choice when we had the Leyline Binding, but they did show counter magic, so we put Yorion into hand here. We attack with the Wandering Mind. We have a Tyrant Scorn here if they try to get Toski in for a draw. So ultimately what we're going to do is we can Toski, Tyrant Scorn Toski here, prevent them from drawing a card. Next turn we can Yorion, blink the whole board, force them to sack if they redeploy the Toski. So ultimately, at the end of the match, our opponent concedes. Yes, that's the end of our run. Pretty rough, but a lot of fun.